as a medical provider, how do you feel about the success of the war on drugs?
The success of the war on drugs.
Yes.
Well, I wouldn't rate it as successful. I think that that our drug policy is misguided. I think that that drug abuse is a disease, and it's treated here mostly like a crime. But these people are sick, and you're a medical provider as well. You see them, as I do, and these people need help. They don't need jail.
That's right. And what would you advocate in terms of resolution? Would you continue? Would you legalize drugs?
I would support a legalization of some drugs, like marijuana. You know, I also support a decriminalization of probably all drugs, as far as the abuser is concerned. I mean, I think that trafficking needs to be dealt with, but as far as the abuser is concerned, I think that we need to start treating it like the disease that it is.
When I got to know you and about your background being a specialist regarding saving limbs and amputees, I made the connection with our military who are coming back as double and triple amputees, and also our current congressman, how he's taking so much money from the defense industry. And I was wondering if you, in your message, were going to make some kind of connection between those two.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we will talk about what the war has done to these people that are coming back now. I mean, I have people that actually, a guy that works for me is an EOD, explosive ordnance deactivation person that was in the Navy, is an undersea EOD, and he tells me about these people on the battlefield and what it's like being out there, and it's unbelievable, you know, and to see these young people coming back who are double and triple amputees, because we have good flak jackets, we have great helmets, so the people that are getting injured, they're losing extremities and they have facial injuries, and it's awful. And I think that you know, I know that we don't have the resources to help all of these people, and this is a commitment that we've made by sending these young men and women into war, and then they come back and we have to take care of them. Mike.
The current hot button issues that everyone seems to be skating around of Social Security, basic major entitlement programs, Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid. Obviously, the solutions aren't the same for each. What thoughts do you have as far as actual methodology?
Well, the first thing is I'm very nervous about economic stimulus plans that cut the payroll tax. As many of you guys know, if you're employees or employers, the payroll tax is what funds Medicare and Social Security. And if we're focusing economic stimulus on cutting those taxes, like the new Obama's jobs plan now is reducing it by half for the employee and by a half for the employer. So these things make me kind of nervous that we already know that they're going to run out of money, and you know, we have yet to see how much sooner that will happen. As far as Medicare is concerned, you know, that our leaders have really been irresponsible with our money, and we're at a point now where you have to put somebody in office that you trust to prioritize things. You know, we have wars, we have defense spending. If you look at the big pie of what the government spends their money on, healthcare, that's a big chunk. It's 21% of the federal budget, and you have to, you know, we take in $7 billion a day. The U.S. government does, and it spends 10.5. Nobody can run their business spending more money every day than they take in. So you have to have somebody that can prioritize and say, well, look, you know, we need to focus our defense efforts here at home and close some military bases that are redundant, and then we can use that money to support these programs like Medicare and Social Security instead of spending us into oblivion. So I think that they're multifaceted. There's a lot of things on the healthcare side that, since I'm a doctor, I'm well aware of certain things like certain treatments that are covered by Medicare that really either have no evidence behind them or even have evidence that show that they don't work. Those things are kind of ridiculous that they're still paid for. And a lot of that has to do with lobbying because Medicare is controlled completely by Congress. And if they lobby to get something covered, then it will be covered. And so these big corporations that make certain devices and certain drugs get things covered. So another thing is that the Medicare Part D is they did not include in Medicare Part D the ability for the government to negotiate drug prices. That's killing us. And in England, they negotiate drug prices. In Canada, they negotiate drug prices. In Germany, they do. Basically, every developed nation in the country, they develop drug prices. They negotiate the drug prices. Where do these drugs come from? They all come from the same companies. You know, even the ones that we get here, a lot of them are manufactured in Mexico, and we get them here. They're all the same drugs. And we should not be funding the research and development for the entire world as Americans. We should say that we're not going to pay 1 penny more for a Lipitor than somebody in England would pay for a Lipitor because it's a developed nation. We should share it. We should share this burden equally among all developed nations.
Just to follow up a little bit, Social Security, long term. Let's presume the payroll tax is only cut for a short period of time, as promised. We know that tax cuts are hard to reinstitute. They talk about raising the age. How much talk? What's your feeling about raising the minimum? Right now it's 160 change.
Right.
And anything over that, someone just doesn't pay.
Yeah, I would support eliminating the cap on the Social Security on payroll tax, so that there is no cap. You pay it on the full amount. I also think that raising the age. You could talk about means testing. I think wealthy people don't mind means testing. If you're wealthy enough and you have your own retirement, do you really care about your $800 a month in Social Security? So I think that means testing is something to be talked about. The major problem is that when the program was first started, there was a 9-to-1 in their payroll taxes. So it's all based on the number of employees to the number of beneficiaries. And there was a 9-to-1 in payee to beneficiary ratio. Now it's about a 4-to-1, and in another 30 years it's going to be 3-to-1. So every three people cannot support every one retired person. So the math doesn't add up. And you either have to talk about reforming the tax system as a whole, and maybe that it's not funded with payroll taxes anymore and it's funded with something else, or there's going to be either drastic cuts or changes in the age. So you only have so much money, and I think that everybody's in agreement that we're in a bad situation, but it's about priorities.
A couple of comments, I guess. One is, what's your feeling? One of the things that I too come from the health, as a healthcare professional, from mental health, where nobody is actually mentally healthy, which we were called the Department of Mental Illness, but we like to dress things up. One of the concerns I have about people with a drug history, an active drug history, to piggyback on that, it was a suggestion made under the Clinton administration, but of course it fizzled because of the new power that the Republicans gathered there. And that was to take some of the defunct military bases and use them as long-term housing and treatment centers for chronic drug users, because the property is already owned and the buildings are already there. It's just a matter of putting people there instead of putting them in a prison. So I don't know if you have heard of that.
I hadn't heard of that. I mean, I think that's better than a prison, but you don't want to segregate people. And if you put all these people all together, I mean, obviously they need treatment, but you don't want to put them all together to where they feel like they're different from the rest of the population, and that's probably where it might be better to treat them in halfway houses where they're among among everyone else and able to go into treatment on a daily basis. So, but I hadn't heard of that.
Well,
before.
we don't have the treatment facilities to do
Right.
that right now, and some of the treatment facilities that I've seen leave a lot to be desired. But, you know, that's
Well, the
just-
first step is decriminalization. That's the first step.
Right, I mean, morphine is not illegal, and yet we control that, so I don't see why we can't control all drugs.
Right.
And just legalize them and tax them and restrict their availability. But, of course, I'm coming from a public health perspective, and also the cost that is involved in incarceration and the, you know, the back and forth and the DA and the public defender and all of that.
Right.
All of that really is a very expensive process. Secondly, I would like to address contracting out, like we have contracted out who takes care of our borders. I have a daughter who works in D.C. who tells me that they pay a contractor 2.5%. I mean, 2.5% more than they would pay a full-time employee, even with fringe benefits. And yet, you know, the hype is, oh, you want to save the taxpayers' money, we're going to contract stuff out. And they do. And it almost never has the same quality. And it, you know, most recently we're reeling on having contracted out our libraries here locally. So I wonder what you feel about contracting out.
Yeah, I don't think that contracting saves any money. I think that it's, you know, especially government contractors, I think they lose a lot of money on that. But what it does is it takes people from being government employees and puts them in the private sector. That's probably the reason why the Republicans like it. But, you know, I think you have to have a nice balance. And I travel a lot. I'm executive platinum on American Airlines. I lecture all over the place for medical reasons, and and so I'm frequently contacted by the TSA in more ways than one when you talk about contact. And I've seen a difference in the TSA agents that are either employed by the government versus the ones that are contracted. And the ones that are contracted, maybe this is something that the company's trying to do, but the ones that are contracted are usually a lot nicer, and because they're worried about their jobs and things like that. So I think that in certain cases it's okay, but you know, I think you need a nice balance. And right now there's a balance between contracted TSA and government employed TSA.
I was asked to ask you this from some of my club members in Friendly Valley. Are you going to give up your practice if you become Congress?
I have to, yeah. It's, and I'll tell you why. And this actually comes, you know, Tom Coburn, a Republican. He's a OB-GYN. There's 18 doctors in Congress right now, and Tom Coburn was, and a lot. You know, it's funny because a lot of the doctors actually agree on certain healthcare issues, whether they're Democrat or Republican. But Tom Coburn was what used to come back home and treat patients in the recesses because he wanted to, you know, keep his feet wet and know what his colleagues were experiencing and all of that. And then Congress started to, the ethics committee or whoever's in charge of ethics started to point fingers at him because he's making money out of Congress. And so he said, that's okay, I'll just start doing it for free. And but in healthcare you can't treat a patient for free because it's against the Medicare rules. So including your own mother, if you treat your own mother, you're technically supposed to bill her. And if she has Medicare, Medicare will pay you. But if she has a private insurance, even the private insurance sometimes won't let you treat your own family. And then you have to technically send them a bill so you don't get in trouble with Medicare, you know, for the full amount. So there's a lot of things in healthcare that can change, including those reasons. But for that reason, I probably would have to give up my practice. And you know, to be honest with you, I don't want to give up my practice. But to be honest with you, these are very needy patients that I treat that are going to lose their legs, and I have to be available at all times. So I wouldn't be able to do that from Washington.
So to follow up on that as a personal question, why is Lee running for Congress? I mean, you're giving up a very lucrative practice, obviously. You're not going to get paid as much in Congress. And on the side note to that, what's your opinion of term limits based on that?
Did my wife call you?
What's that?
Did my wife call you? Because my wife actually said to me, She said, so you want to go from one of the most revered professions in the world to one of the most reviled. And she said, you want to make, you know, a half or a third as much money. And I said, well, I guess you could put it that way. She said, where's the win? You know, but the reason is that I have a passion for doing this right now. I feel like every time I turn around, there's something else that's going wrong. I don't trust the people that are in Congress. I don't trust our government. And those type of things, when you have that passion, you're willing to give up all of that other stuff to go and make some changes. I think I would support term limits. I think that most doctors actually, if you look at the doctors that are in Congress, they term limit themselves because some politicians are career politicians and they don't really have another job and they don't have anything else they can go back to.
Like Buck McKeon.
Well, we've had one for 18 years.
Right, exactly. and so I do have another job, and I like my job, and I would like to go make changes to how everything functions, and then come back and live in the world that I helped to create. So that's, you know, I don't know how long that would take, but but I would support term limits. Doctor?
I got two questions. One, I think with just giving one term, you get retirement. And do you know how much that is?
No, you get it. You actually have to put into retirement now. You have to pay Social Security, and you have to put into it, and you don't vest before 6 years. So if you're one term as a senator, you would vest. If you're 3 terms as a representative, you would vest. But it's not. I mean, it's just like if you worked at any other job and you only worked there for 6 years and only put in for 6 years. It is a matching program. Mm-hmm. I think they match very nicely. They match better than most private jobs would match. But it's not a lot. I don't think it's that much money.
Not that much better than
Right.
other retirement.
Right.
Second question. Our district is largely Republican. Imagine you're talking to a Republican audience. How are you going to flavor the message to be receptive to that topic?
Well, first, I think the district is largely independent or moderate, and I think that there are. If you look at the registered, so that there's a lot of changes that happened recently. But if you look, it became less Republican than what it was. I mean, there's no argument about that. And you can argue that possibly there's somewhere between 2 and 4% advantage on the registered Republican side. But if you look at the voting index, maybe only 1% on the voting index side. So I think that the district is mostly independent or mostly moderate. I'm actually a pretty moderate. I have pretty moderate ideology. I used to be a Republican when I was in medical school, and it's well, I used to be. I said used to.
You saw the light.
I know I did. I saw the light.
Okay.
So I think that that party kind of left the middle a long time ago, and they don't represent those people anymore. And it just it just makes me sick that as I said in my speech, the extreme social positions that they take, that even when you look at it in 2010 on this Tea Party wave and this discontent, this public discontent with how the government is going, it really went strongly Republican, right? Well, what's the first thing that they do? The discontent wasn't over abortion, wasn't over gay marriage, wasn't over any of these things, but the discontent was over how the economy was looking. And they get elected, and the first thing that they do is they're in all the state houses and they're trying to outlaw abortion and trying to defend the DOMA Act, and that kind of stuff just I don't think sits well with people, and especially the middle of the road people. If they would have got in and said, hey, we're going to tackle this economic problem, at least you're doing something. So I mean, you can tell from some of my points that I do have a moderate flair to me. I think that we do have our own oil here. We should be drilling for our own oil instead of having.
Save it for our future generation. Okay, we used up half our oil in less than 80 years for all citizens who ever live on this planet.
Well, what I'm saying is that when we have
change the technology so we don't need the oil. We
Right.
don't have to worry about it.
Right.